don't want him in the family.
The more people we have, the more we save.
All right, we're back, and you're listening to America's Voice Now. You know, the IRS is bad enough when they're activating enemies and they are acting as a mercenary, destroying the fabric of this country. They are being used as a mercenary with a deadly weapon to destroy America from the inside out. But to make things even worse, there are some groups within the United States who are TeaParty organizations that use the 501c4 functionality that, you know, that the administration promotes, and they are actually misusing some of these, you know, well, they're not spending the money that they're receiving, which is not tax deductible, by the way. Most of these are 501c4s. And the difference, by the way, is that a 501c4 is not tax deductible, but they don't have to tell you who their donors are. But let's be candid. The two TeaParty organizations that are referenced in this article, and this is from the Daily Caller, so this is not by any means to be construed or taken as a condemnation of all of the TeaParty, those individuals who support the TeaParty, and myself included, and nor is it intended to be a blanket statement about Tea Party people or the organizations in general. There are two that are referenced in this article. And I got to tell you, the numbers on one of them is, and we're going to talk about which ones are which. When we're talking about an organization that is expending an enormous amount of money and they're receiving a lot of money in donations from individuals, but the money is not going where it's supposed to go, that's a problem. And you can't justify that with any kind of explanation that they're offering. At least, and I'm open to hearing what they have to say. And I've got a letter here, which I just got from Tea Party Patriots this morning, in fact, who's arguing the position on the other side. So we're going to be fair, and we're going to be balanced, and we're going to utilize our critical thinking skills and objectivity to determine what, and this will play out a little as we go forward, because this is breaking this morning. But here's the deal. The article is from the Daily Caller, which is, no one should make the mistake of thinking the Daily Caller is a true alternative media source. Don't. It's not. But the article is clear. And they've got a lot of statistical numbers to back it up. Two well-known Tea Party groups spent more than 80% of the money they raised in 2013, but not on the causes and the candidates that they saw it as their mission to support, but on operating expenditures. They paid a lot of consultants, they paid a lot of companies, and they produced a lot of mailing materials, and they rented a lot of mailing lists. Now, the numbers are pretty high. And they're referencing two of them specifically here. There's the new Tea Party Patriots Citizens Fund, which is an independent expenditure arm of the Tea Party Express, and the Our Country Deserves Better PAC. And basically, these organizations spent a significant chunk of the money that they took in on non-political campaigns. In other words, most of the money that they're taking in is going right back out again in fundraising. So it says, so far, no money has been spent to support these candidates. The mission of the PAC will be the PAC's mission, by the way, when we talk about the Tea Party Patriot Citizens Fund, has been raising money since early last year. And the goal of their PAC, they say, is to be a community organizing for conservatives that will help provide activists with resources to organize friends, neighbors, and communities around a freedom agenda in an effort to put people in office who will be true representatives of the people. Okay? The mission of the PAC will be to support good citizen candidates to run for public office and represents the views of the majority of Americans in all levels of government. But so far, they have filed the year-end spending report that they filed with the Federal Election Commission Of the $6,405,000 that the company has raised since early last year, $5,335,000 of it has been spent, and all of it was put towards operating expenses. Hello? Now, the vast majority of this came from individuals because the Tea Party is, for all intents and purposes, made up of just plain Jane Joes and Janes, right? That's us. The small folks who don't have a lobby group that's out there lobbying for our interests. I mean, the aerospace industry has one, the senior citizens have one, the banana companies have one, horseshoe manufacturers have a lobbyist, for crimini's sake. But nobody's lobbying for just average Americans. And so these Tea Party groups contend that they are. And the vast majority of these donations came from donors who were individuals, under $200. They reported that out of the $6.4 million, 4.7 of that was unitemized donations under the $200 mark. That's the vast majority, ladies and gentlemen. Now, here's the problem. If they're spending, Strategic Fundraising, a Minnesota-based company that specializes in fundraising, was paid $1,028,000 for list rentals. I got a problem with that. Because what that tells me is, do you ever get that phone call that says, and usually the guy's got a heavy New York accent. He says, "Hey, I'm calling for the PBA over here. We're trying to raise money for police officers who have been injured in the line of duty. And you know what? They're a fundraising group. It's never the actual PBA itself. And they keep up to 75% of the donations that are made. Never donate to groups like that. Ever. And frankly, I don't donate to anybody until I can see their numbers. And I got to tell you, if I found out that it's somebody I'm donating to is spending 80% of the money that I'm donating, going back out and trying to raise more money, we generally have nothing further to talk about. They spent $892,000 on printing and mailing. And they spent another $647,000 for direct mail, fundraising, consulting, media production, postage, and transaction fees. Now, look, I understand that these groups have to get out there to the public, and I understand that they're trying to raise awareness. But this money isn't being spent on saying, hey, vote for Joe or Bob or Charlie or Cindy or Betty. This money is being spent to say, join us and donate. And one of the guys here, a guy named Martin, was paid $90,000 for his strategic consulting. Here's their response. Here's Martin's response. We were building our supporter base for starting an organization essentially from scratch. So we have to begin building the supporter base for Tea Party Patriot Citizens Fund. And we began doing fundraising and also advertising that we had the Tea Party Patriots Citizens Fund. So far, she said, they have been, quote, building out a national voter database, setting up technology and infrastructure to support their efforts moving forward. Additionally, they've spent money on message testing and polling. Here's the problem. This is beginning to smell an awful lot like a corporate effort, not a group of citizens who are saying, what can we do to take our country back? Now, I'm not going to throw them under the bus based on this report, But I can tell you this. I'm going to be doing some hard looking at whatever other information I can find from these groups. And we're going to try to figure out whether or not. Here's my concern. If the Tea Party group is playing the same games as the Republican and the Democratic parties, then frankly, I've got no use for them. Now, Tea Party Patriots, and there was another one out there, by the way. This is the Our Country Deserves Better PAC that declares itself committed to identifying and supporting conservative candidates and causes that will champion Tea Party values and return our country to the constitutional principles that have made America the shining city on a hill. That sounds great, right? The group allocated its spending in a similar fashion to the Tea Party Patriot Fund. It raised $6 million, the vast majority of which, $4.9 million, came from donors giving amounts smaller than $200. Now, and this group is different, so just stick with the numbers here for a moment. The group spent $5.7 million in total. 5.6 of that, or 98.6 of that, went towards operating expenses, direct mail salaries, and paying strategic consultants. 98.6%? Hello? $55,995 went to independent expenditures. That's generally that which is attributed to candidates. Now, a company called Russo Marsh and Associates received $1.9 million for a variety of functions, including fundraising by mail, telemarketing, advertising, strategic consulting, as well as a number of reimbursements of travel expenses and postage. Amy Kremer, the chairman of the Tea Party Express, got $92,000 for strategic consulting. $421,000 went to a direct mail fundraising firm, HSP Direct, for creative fees. Wow. I mean, I run a small advertising business. What would I do for a $421,000 contract for creative fees? Hello? Now, FreedomWorks. FreedomWorks has been around. They're not new this year, right? FreedomWorks, another group that identifies with the Tea Party, works to organize activists, spent most of their money on overhead in 2013. But hang on a minute, because the year before they did something completely different. So I got to question what's going on here. They raised $850,000 on top of $831,000 they began the year with. They spent $1 million in total, and 87.3 of that went to operating expenses. Okay, 12.4% went to independent expenditures, again, which is attributable to the candidates themselves or candidate elections. But in 2012, when the Tea Party was battling to unseat Democrats in Congress and President Barack Obama, the numbers looked different. FreedomWorks began the year with $1.99 million, $2 million, and they raised $20.8 million over the course of the year. They spent $22 million of that in total. And of that, 93% went to independent expenditures. And operating costs were only $2.5 million. So something's not right here. In 2012, they spent 90-some-odd% on these independent expenditures, which one has to assume they're, and I reserve the right to know how exactly independent expenditures is defined, but 90% of it in 2012 went to independent expenditures, allegedly or assumably candidates, and helping them, move their campaigns when they're starved for cash because the Republican and Democratic parties are, sucking all the money out of the room like a vacuum, right? But this year, when we ought to be trying to move to get every member in the House and the Senate fired and removed, it's the other way around. Has there been a change in leadership? Now, the 2012 election had little impact on Our Country Deserves Better PAC and how they spent their money. They began the year with $115,000 in the bank. They raised $6.5 million. They spent $5.7. Of that, 86% went to operating costs. $250,500 was given to other political committees or candidates, and $539,000 went towards independent expenditures. Here's my problem. The response is, we're not Club for Growth, he says Budowich, who's the Taylor Budowich, the executive director for Tea Party Express. He says the group is focused on organizing and educating voters, not spending money to help candidates. Okay, but I got to tell you, organizing and educating voters, the administrative costs can't be 86%. I mean, there's something wrong with that. I got this email this morning from Tea Party Patriots. I'm going to read it to you because it's important, because it relates to this, and I want to be fair. Since the Tea Party movement began 5 years ago, we've been under attack by the media, declared dead over and over again, and criticized by congressional leadership from people like Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, whom we thought we would welcome our spirited work to help get our fiscal house in order. Yet, just as we are building for the 2014 elections, we see more and more scrutiny and more attempts to delegitimize the hard work of Tea Party members all over the country. Such was the case in a news story by the Washington Post on Sunday. We shouldn't be surprised that the GOP establishment and the liberal media are coordinating their attacks against leading Tea Party organizations and their leaders. In fact, look for another similar attack coming very soon from others. That tells me that something else is coming out here. These news reports, quote unquote, include sensational allegations regarding what might appear to be, to the uninformed, as excessive fundraising costs. Their storyline is that Tea Party Patriots and Tea Party Patriots Citizens Fund spend too much money on fundraising with little left over to actually help drive our issues and help our endorsed candidates. Nothing could be further from the truth. We at Tea Party Patriots use email and direct mail to not only raise small dollar contributions from thousands of people, but also to communicate directly with our members on important issues. The IRS targeting scandal, the national debt, taxes and spending, Obamacare, Benghazi, and immigration reform, to name just a few. These are the same issues the so-called mainstream media either fail to cover at all or cover in ways that distort the truth. In less than 5 years, we've placed over $250 million, that's with a B, email messages, that's their words, not mine. We've placed over $250 million, with a B, email messages directly into the inboxes of conservative Americans. In the mail, we have disseminated over 34.7 million messages into mailboxes of our citizens. Over 1.2 million people have signed online petitions or taken some other activist action from email communications, and over 600,000 have signed hard copy petitions or taken some other step in activism related to our principles. Since October, we have generated over 3 million calls into congressional offices supporting our issues. Each week, through our communication efforts in snail mail, email, radio advertising, social media, and through the dedicated efforts of individual patriotic Americans, we spread the message to local volunteer networks, and we reach over 20 million Americans with our vision for the country's future. A nation where personal freedom is cherished and where all Americans are treated equally, assuring the ability of all Americans to pursue their American dream. All of the money spent by Tea Party Patriots goes to advance Tea Party principles and issues, and that spent by Tea Party Patriot Citizens Fund helps candidates who support those same principles: personal freedom, economic freedom, and a debt-free future. The media, conveniently and quite possibly deliberately, overlooks a fundamental fact of American politics for the last 50 years: the virtual monopoly of control over the so-called mainstream media enjoyed by our political opponents in both parties. Because we and our allies cannot rely on being able to spread our message through ABC, CBS, NBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, or scores of other so-called mainstream media outlets, we've been forced to create our own channels of communication so we can speak directly to our supporters and potential supporters without waiting for permission, quote unquote, from the editors of the New York Times. I would agree with that. Consequently, while the Tea Party Patriots is grassroots-based and volunteer-driven, altruism inevitably meets reality. It costs money to operate an organization of this magnitude. When we hire an employee, he or she is paid to work toward our mission. When we travel, it is to work toward our mission. When we lease an office, it is to have a place to work to advance our mission. When we pay for training and tools for volunteers, it's so that we can better accomplish our mission. When we buy supplies, buy equipment, pay contractors, pay lawyers, pay for parking, pay for anything and everything we buy, it is all to accomplish our mission. When we formed the Tea Party Patriots in 2009, and when we started the Citizens Fund in 2013, we knew the mainstream media would oppose us. So now we are not surprised when high-level politicians in the Republican establishment have joined forces with the liberal media to smear us, In fact, it tells us we're doing something right. The establishment sees its hold on power threatened, and the liberal media remains frustrated that they no longer have a monopoly on the flow of information. We expect both to ramp up their attacks in the coming months. The more successful we are, the more vicious the attacks. We're going to keep fighting for personal freedom, economic freedom, and a debt-free future. Smears from the liberal media and GOP establishment will not deter us. We wear them as badges of honor. Okay, that was from the Tea Party Patriots. Now, okay, so here's my concern. And I don't disagree with some of the things that they're saying in this document. But I got to tell you something. I get a mailbox full of stuff like this every day. And I don't read every one. And I don't go and follow every link. And I will say this. Every one of them, and I get them from the Republicans, I get them from the Tea Party, I even get a couple from progressives. Every one of them is laden with demands and requests for money. And most of them are laden with fear that if you don't do this and you don't give us some money, here's what's going to happen. I got a question. This show has been out here for 3 years. And this isn't sour grapes or something. I'm just using myself as an example. We operate not on a shoestring budget, but on less than a shoestring. I hold the show together with rubber bands and spit and tissue and toilet paper. Why aren't you guys out there supporting radio programs like this? Hello? There are actual groups that sent me. I've actually had groups that have sent me an email that said, do you need money for your organization? Well, we have a grant program. One of them was Convention of the States. And I submitted an application to them. And they came back and they said, well, it was to buy equipment, right? And they said, well, we don't support, capital expenditures. And in their document, they said we don't support operating expenditures. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If you don't have capital expenditure and you don't have operating expenditure, what exactly do you support? Because there's nothing else. I get the feeling, look, here's the point. There are alternative media groups out there that are starving to death. Lots of great radio programs out there, and all of them could use a boost. Why isn't the Tea Party advertising with those programs and giving them some funding that way? And I'll be honest with you, the email and the mail thing, it's called junk mail for a reason, ladies and gentlemen, on both domestic, hard physical snail mail and email. The truth is, you'd be better off, I think, spending the money, not with these people who are going to stand there and wear their $1,000 suits. This is the same crap that's advertised, that's promoting and driving the Republican Party. The same consultants. If you need a consultant to tell you why the Tea Party needs to exist, then perhaps you're in the wrong frame. I've actually had people in these organizations tell me, well, your message is not mainstream enough for the Tea Party. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, the country's coming down around our heads. It's a house of cards that's falling in slow motion as we're standing here. We have a president who is not even an American citizen, who is operating unconstitutionally. We have a federal government that operates so far outside the constitutional boundaries that it's not even a distant memory, hazy memory to them. You have administrative agencies that operate like a mercenary police force or a mercenary military force that are now literally, according to the IRS, shooting. And you got an attorney general who obviously is so far outside the boundaries of the law that everybody he puts in jail he's more guilty than. And you're telling me it's not mainstream enough. That tells me something's wrong with the message. We're going to continue to look into this. I don't want this to be construed by anybody to be a toss against the Tea Party organizations and many of the small ones. But I got to tell you, if we find out that this money is being squandered, I'll go after you just like I'd go after any Republican, just like I'd go after any Democrat, Soros, Boehner, or any of the rest of them. You're not exempt. And I hope for your sake, that's not the case. because it would be a tragedy if this turned out to be more about money than about saving the dog-knob country. Please prove to us otherwise. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Please make sure that you communicate with us and visit us at our website at americasvoicenow.org. You can also communicate with me directly by sending me email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. Maybe some of you folks who support these Tea Party organizations with donations would be better off to direct them to groups and individuals where you know the money is going to go directly towards their costs and not towards generating more. Just a thought. God bless. Have a great day.